This is Cheryl Morgan at the New Zealand National Science Fiction Convention in Auckland. I'm here with Russell Kirkpatrick, who's one of the local authors. Russell is a writer of large fantasy books. I confess that I haven't actually read any myself, so perhaps you'd like to start by telling us a little bit about what you write.
Well, you're right. I do write large fantasy books, and I've written 2 trilogies because that's what people who write large fantasy books do.
It is indeed.
And there's always a but. I'm trying to make them a little different to normal trilogies, and we all say that. But things have changed a little bit in fantasy, and I think fantasies now are somewhat more challenging than they were. Certainly, even since I started writing. We're not talking so much good versus evil. We're talking about exploring the weird and wonderful variety of humanity within a fantasy context.
Yeah. Or indeed not humanity. The classic cliche of fantasy is that my elves are different. So
Yes.
Presumably your elves are different.
Well, no, because you see, I only have humans.
Ah, well, yeah. Your elves are different because they're non-existent.
That's right. They're all people.
Good, good. So the actual books, if people are interested in going out to look for them, the titles?
There are 2 trilogies. Fire of Heaven's the first one, and the second one is the Broken Man trilogy.
Okay, well, and they're published by?
They're in the UK and US. They're published by Orbit.
Alrighty, yes, so that should be nice and easy for people to find.
I think so.
Jolly good. Okay, and I've heard some rumours that you do some fairly nasty things to your lead characters.
I can confirm those rumours, yes. I'm not quite sure exactly what you'd want, what I'd be able to tell you. But
well, we don't want YouTube to pull this interview because we've mentioned naughty words on it. But I gather that one of your characters loses particular parts of his body.
One particular part, yes. I thought he was getting too close to the leading lady myself, and since I wasn't getting the action, I didn't think he should either.
Alrighty, well that sounds perfectly reasonable, actually. Okay, so moving on. One of the things that you get in every big fantasy book, of course, is a map. And often those maps are pretty appalling. I've seen maps where rivers flow up and down mountain ranges and things like that. But Russell, you're a professional cartographer, so I expect your maps are going to be rather better than average.
Well, yeah, I tried really hard with them. Standard fantasy maps, pointy witches' hats, and as you say, rivers that go all over the place, and worlds and areas that are imaginatively titled, things like Northland and Southland and Eastland and Westland, and I'm not picking on any book in particular, but my view was that fantasy gives you a chance to be more than what this world is, a chance to explore beyond the boundaries, and yet we settle for such a paucity of really interesting maps and interesting places. What I tried to do is do something exotic and different, and so my maps aren't standard maps at all. Some of them are three-dimensional views, some of them are logarithmic projections. We've got all sorts of weird and wonderful things in the books.
Okay, and we have an example of your professional work here, which I found absolutely fascinating. It's a contemporary atlas of New Zealand. I'm not sure how well this is going to appear on the video, but we'll just take a look at the book here. And some of the maps in here are very much non-traditional sorts of things. Just open it at random here. Oh, there's something about rugby clubs in New Zealand there. What a surprise.
Yeah, well.
Yes, and also cricket clubs. Golf clubs, perhaps that's a bit more familiar for somebody from America. But in addition to that, there are things like these maps here, which is all about degrees of social deprivation. And again here, a set of maps which are all about how different women spend their lives. So could you tell us a little bit about the current state of the cartography industry, the sort of work that you're doing?
Well, the cartography industry is very conservative because it's always served particular interests, and I see myself as a postmodern cartographer. my contribution, if you like, is to try and undermine standard cartography by picking topics that people don't examine. People don't consider, for example, feminist issues mappable things, but I think they are. And the map you looked at, the Three City Women map, is designed to look at the limits that women have placed upon them in the way that they can use a city. And so I'm constantly trying to undermine normal cartographic wisdom, not only in the subject matter that I use, but also the way the maps look, to try and make them look more like they're user-friendly. In fact, the university work I did in my PhD thesis was entitled Putting Users on the Map. So it's very much trying to work back to the situation that cartography used to be, which was it was about the spiritual as well as the physical.
Okay, so this is very much about a map is a tool of power because it defines people by showing them in particular ways, in much the same way as the issue that most people will know about is how the standard map of the world shows the northern hemisphere on top and the southern hemisphere on the bottom.
Yeah, that's right. And the British Empire is coloured in red and all the rest of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're looking to undermine all that kind of thing, and anyone who thinks that cartography is neutral and value-free probably still hasn't realised that that's not what science or cartography is about. It's about serving particular interests. I know I'm sounding rather radical here, but we're talking about a cartography that has really supported the whole notion of colonisation. You know, the way in which the world was divided, and you know, cartographers were important parts of society back then. Of course, in the supposedly post-colonial era, you know, geography and cartography is no longer as important. You know, we live in a world now where people aren't learning the names of capitals of countries and the chief exports and so on, because they're not preparing their sons and daughters to be harbingers of empire. You know.
Yeah, well, it might not be important from that point of view, but I think cartography is still vitally important in our understanding of the world and our relationship to it, not to mention our relationship to other countries.
Yeah, it is, but I still think we miss out on so much. I mean, our lives are full of geographies that never get on paper, emotional geographies, for example, how people feel about things. So if you've got an area like a campus, a university campus, and women are being exposed to attacks, I mean, this was happening in the campus I was involved with, so we put a map together of where people felt afraid and presented it to the university council. And it was only when they saw that map, which looked like a scientific document, that they thought they ought to take some action. When people were actually just telling them what they felt, that kind of geography didn't matter to them. You see, the map validated, made it look scientific, and it's that kind of game I'm playing with my atlases. The maps are validating what people actually think and feel, and so therefore they become real.
One of the things that interests me about the way the world is developing at the moment is that our communities now are becoming not geographically based, but based around common interests and ideas, because we communicate with people via the internet rather than face to face. How do you see that impacting cartography?
I think there are also, there are ways of mapping these connections too.
I'm sure there are, yeah.
I mean, I'm reminded, for example, in New Zealand of our indigenous people, the Māori, who have connections that cover the landscape but aren't seen. So you might, if you're, there is a point to this analogy I'm using, but if you're living in an area and you've married into the neighbouring tribe, you have rights there that your next door neighbour might not have. And those rights change, and the interface, the no man's land or whatever between tribes changes, and so the landscape is rich with relationship, and it's being renegotiated all the time. And I see the same thing happening with virtual landscapes. They're rich, but they're being renegotiated as we shift our centre, as we make new contacts, as we discard old ones, and all the rest of it. So while it might be very difficult to map on a bit of paper, traditional cartography, we have computer-based animation tools that can take care of that kind of thing to illustrate the kinds of networks that we're developing as people, not just as individuals but as groups.
Okay, well that's absolutely fascinating. Unfortunately, we're running out of time for a YouTube upload, but I'm very much looking forward to seeing you do some panels at Worldcon. I gather you'll be at Australia in Melbourne next year.
That's right.
And also possibility of a visit to the UK following that.
Yeah, I intend to be in the UK sometime in 2010, probably in September, October.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Russell.
That's right.